Hey everyone, this is Hunter, and today I want to pitch to y'all a horror short titled American Cannibal, written by Stephen Wood. So, this was a horror short I found while looking for a good script on Simply Scripts, and this was one that I thought had really good legs that was standing on, or I should say, just a really good foundation, as had a great mix of like horror, satire, and not really dark comedy, really more satire. But anyway, it had this really great mix of elements, and even with kind of those big themes that come with it, I feel like the story in of itself is pretty manageable, and I feel it's one that could be easily knocked out. And so, without further ado, let's get into it. So, for my pitching process, I've separated it into different parts, with the first part being the logline and tagline, which I feel like probably the most, which I feel probably like the most important part in the pitching process. As you know, that's what I feel like a producer is going to ask you, like in a really quick, succinct way. What is this movie about, without fully breaking down the story. So without further ado, here it is. So, the logline for this movie is: a neat baby-faced finance professional with a secret human meat diet invites his three co-workers over for a gourmet steak dinner, enforcing them into a deadly night of cannibalism and slaughter when they discover the meat was a missing woman he butchered in his own apartment. And I feel like I came up with a good tagline here, which is fine dining, fresh victims. I know it's a bit cheesy and kind of ham-fisted. It's definitely a work in progress, but I feel it's one that kind of still gives the film its singular voice. And for the next part, here's the story walkthrough or the beats. So American Cannibal follows Henry. He's, this clean-cut guy. He's in his 30s, but I feel we can easily substitute that for someone who's in his 20s, with, all the people we have in the Texas State film program, everyone there's mainly in their 20s that are actors. And, this guy, he seems to have it all. He's got a beautiful apartment, a great office life, and he's got a great taste in, in like food and music, and really just seems to have everything. And the movie like opens up with a night in his apartment. He's welcoming Tiff. He's this woman that is invited over. I would say, gonna have a good time. Good night of eating, and then they start drinking champagne. They put on some good dance music, and then when you feel like nothing can go wrong, Henley then suddenly grabs Tiff by the throat, and then he strangles her, like as the music gets louder and louder. Then after he like successfully kills her, he drags her body into the bathroom, hangs her in the tub, and then he calmly butchers her. Like it's very off-putting with like how easy this comes to him. And then we cut to like, I use this for the lack of a better word, as I couldn't really find one, but I feel like it kind of describes it in a good way. Comes off as kind of sensual, but like it's a very disturbing cooking sequence with like the meat, which is obviously Tiff. It's sizzling in the pan, with the salt, and it's all like all the proper ingredients like salt and pepper, and there's like some butter and Cabernet. Like there's like all these great details where like he makes it, like he goes really elaborate into like cooking this meat, and then Henry starts eating this like steak, this meat with like complete focus, and I feel like most people will already get like what he's doing, but they'll realize after that he's eating Tiff. And then after that, we shift to his office, the place where he works, and he's there joking around with his co-workers, and their names are Carl, Jeffrey, and David, and he talks about how he's on a new meat-based, high-protein diet, and he invites them over to dinner to try it out. And that night, they're back in his apartment, and they're all sitting around the table. They're getting drunk. They're happy, and they're talking about how great this food is, like how great the steak is, and talking, if it's Wagyu or Kobe. And they're asking, like, who's the butcher? Who made this for you? And Henry, like, kind of smiles, and he's like, and he says he slaughtered and butchered himself. And then they start pressing him on it, and he then brings out, like, this big roasting pan, and there's this piece of meat that's wrapped in foil, and then as he reveals it, it's a human head, and it's Tiff's head. And like script like goes into great detail about it. Like it's hairless, it's toothless, it's kind of like almost golden brown, like kind of very yucky. Then one friend, rushes to the kitchen. He opens the fridge and he finds like all these Ziploc bags, like of human meat, like all labeled with women's names. And then he finds the torso, Tiff's torso, which is stuffed inside. And before they can all fully react, Henry serves like this special wine to them, which is laced with poison. And then as one by one, they all start coughing blood. They'll convulsing, and they all collapse on the table. And Carl, he makes this like one last attempt to attack Henry, and he slices off like some of his fingers before he dies. And Henry starts looking at like the bloody stumps of his fingers, and he picks up one, and I would say kind of a shocking sequence. He then tastes it as like he's kind of intrigued by the flavor somewhat. And then in the final scene, we're in this we're in a different location. We're at a storage unit, and Henry's near this big empty chest freezer, and he starts stacking like the wrapped limbs and torsos of his friends inside, and he's organizing them all neatly before he closes the lid and leaves. So for the next part of this, which is the tone, genre, and audience, I would say that this is elevated horror with dark satirical humor that's definitely in line with American Psycho, and definitely Hannibal, with like the cooking sequences are very reminiscent of those in Hannibal. And it's definitely way more than that of a cheap slasher, as there's a lot more going on there than just a crazy guy killing people. And it definitely leans into a lot of stark contrasts with like his sleek apartment, and then you got like these really like almost like beautiful cooking shots which are then put against like the graphic like unsettling reveals of like Henry's like true desires. And the primary audience is obviously adults, or I would say like adults who like enjoy like psychologically driven horror, again stuff like Hannibal and American Psycho, but even kind of like Seven, is there's that kind of a tone there that's kind of like realistic but not too much, but again still definitely a satire. And again that's another one of the audiences, people who enjoy social satires, and that also includes people who like a stylish character-based scares rather those cheap jump scares that come with like most horror movies. And then I feel that this story is like really great for class, as the story is very contained, but like it feels big, and as we have like multiple locations with Henry's apartment with distinct areas, with those being his living room, the kitchen room, the dining room, and then his bathroom, and then we got his office with the big open windows, and there's obviously a corporate feel to it. And then we got the storage unit with the chest freezer, with the large freezer and the duffel bags. And then we also have 4 strong roles with Henry's the lead, Tiff, the first victim, and then Carl, Jeffrey, and David, who are his next unfortunate victims. Then I feel that we could add some like office backgrounds in that office sequence, to make this world feel a little more lived in. And then from a packaging and like producing standpoint, I feel like it's very rich in elements that are necessary to break down and schedule, with those being like the special effects and makeup, like the strangulation marks, the blood work, the roasted head, the severed limbs, and the torso in the fridge. Then you got the props like the champagne bottles, the knives, the decanters, which are like something people use for cooking, and labeled meat bags. And then also one element, like I forget to include, the script does go into detail of them like particularly in that first sequence with Tiff and Henry, of them like doing coke and cocaine. So we'll obviously we'll have to find a way to simulate like cocaine bags, and I feel like that can be easily fixed. Just get some bags of flour and then dump it in there. Obviously we don't want the actors sniffing that, but we'll just use that in place of that. And then like on a scheduling side, the story gives us like some practical problems that I feel that we can easily solve, like kind of plan like a heavy effects days where like we cluster all like the heavy blood and prosthetic work, so like the makeup team can be very efficient, and so we don't have to wait too long on shots that require those elements. And then I feel like we should work really hard on grouping scenes by location and the time of day, like the clean apartment scenes versus the bloody apartment scenes, and then all the office scenes like on 1 or 2 days, and it's separate like a block for like the storage unit. And then I feel we should build in like extra time between like the office, apartment, the storage unit, and for resetting blood and the wardrobe continuity, so we can get that really fleshed out and make sure no problems like arise through there. And then also like coordinating like cast days, so like we're not bringing in actors just for one like one small scene, when we can consolidate their work. And even though like this is a very kind of effects heavy story, particularly the violent parts, I feel that like these can be handled with simple practical solutions. Like we can easily use like foam, like latex, and food-based meat. We can, even if we can't like find anything like at a costume store or something like that, I feel like we can easily simulate that. And then we can also like buy some fake blood, as I mentioned, like some Halloween stores or costume stores. And of course, these don't have to be perfect to work on camera, because I feel that this is a story that doesn't need to be perfect. And again, taking on a project with like this many effects and props means everyone, I feel that will work on it, we'll learn a lot more about filmmaking, especially like about scheduling, like continuity, and prep. Like we'll all connect like on a real set. So like overall, I feel that this story like gives us a stylish, character-driven story that's, I feel, even though there will be some really tricky elements to shoot, I feel it can still be very realistic to shoot, but will be robust enough to treat it like a feature, and for packaging, scheduling, and like budgeting across the semester, and one that I feel that we can all learn a lot from, and the experiences that we get from it we can take on to other projects we take in the future. So yeah, without further ado, that is my pitch. Thank you all and have a good day.